Welcome everyone. Today's topic of conversation is the Urbana Arts and Culture Program's Urbana Arts Grants. This grant workshop is designed to sort of give you an overview of the arts grant process, as well as I tend to start the workshop with telling you a little bit about some additional opportunities outside of the grant program, so you also are aware of other ways that you can get involved, seek gigs and opportunities and exhibition opportunities and all sorts of things through the arts program. And then we'll go into an overview of the grant program, what we look for in terms of the brass tacks of submitting an application, grant restrictions, eligibility guidelines, where the funding comes from, and then the whole process. So we do include also an overview of our jury process, the timeline, and just generally what you can expect. There's some time at the end for question and answer. And for those that are viewing this as a recording, I encourage you to reach out to me, Rachel Lawrence Storm, Arts and Culture Coordinator at rlstorm@urbanaillinois.us. I will be sharing my email again at the end, but feel free to reach out. This is the recorded Arts and Culture Arts Grant Workshop, but we will be having drop-in grant hours, and I will go over this again in a further slide. We will be having some drop-in grant hours. We encourage you to get in touch if you seek to apply for a grant. So the most important thing is to know that the resources are here for you, and this grant workshop is just the beginning of how we can help you through the grant process. So let's get started. I want to just give you a little bit of background. The Urbana Public Arts Program, as it was originally named, was established in 2008 to foster a city where all residents can engage in the arts and where artists can thrive and feel valued. In 2018, we went through a bit of a revision. We decided to rename ourselves the Urbana Arts and Culture Commission as part of an effort to more deeply reflect the inextricable relationship between the arts and culture. We also rewrote our mission. So at that, now we call ourselves Celebrating Urbana's Artistic and Cultural Diversity. The Arts and Culture Commission has a 9-member advisory board that meets monthly. These members are appointed by the mayor. And here's our current commission. Our chair is Pat Salmon, and other members include Courtney Becks, Frank Modica, Barbara Headland, Gonzalo Pinilla, Jared Miller, Janelle Orcherton, Stacy Robinson, and Angela Williams. And these are your wonderful commissioners who also can answer questions about the grant program. And as I get into talking about the process, I'll also reiterate to you that on every one of our juries, no matter what type of thing we're doing for the arts program, if there's a jury, there's a member of our commission on that jury. And then for Tier 3 grants, which won't be the focus of today's topic, but certainly is another category of our grant program, we do also have specific to that tier, these arts commissioners actually select for Tier 3 directly through their meetings. And those are publicly accessible meetings, so you can look at the deliberations and hear more about that process. Okay, oh, and one more thing I'll just state quickly about these commissioners. They come from a wide variety of artistic backgrounds, from graphic design to symphony orchestra to public arts education, to jazz, to just quite to production, to education, to the academy. We just have quite a lot of representation of different artistic sectors among them and areas of expertise, both in culture and in the arts. And so I encourage you to reach out to them because collectively they have substantial expertise and would be able to help you as you think through grant projects as well. So let's talk a little bit in brief about our programs, because I don't like to give these grant workshops without telling you about all the ways that we can support you. And I should say, all the ways, however, this is only a snapshot because I won't go into detail on all of these projects, but we have quite a number of ongoing programs. And this is all viewable at urbanaillinois.us/arts. So that is this web link at the bottom here, where you can go and you can actually learn about all of our ongoing programs, with particular highlighting of things that are continuing in spite of COVID-19, as well as some artist relief resources that we put on our website to make sure people know about relief funding and other opportunities for artists to carry them through this time. So let me talk to you a little bit about these programs, because my goal is to encourage you to also consider not only that these programs represent other opportunities for you, but that as you're crafting your grant proposal, some of these opportunities serve as potential venues or opportunities for partnership in the design of your program itself. So that can mean that if you're looking through these programs as I talk about them and you see something that you think would actually quite fit or maybe be a great venue in which you can share the work that you're wanting to create or the project you're wanting to launch, I encourage you to get in touch with me, because I very often would love to have the arts program partner as part of a grant proposal, but even outside of the grant proposal projects. Just think about it as an opportunity for us to work together. So just to give you a snapshot of some of the things we do. One of the things that has continued despite COVID-19, although now we're all via Zoom, is the Young Artist Studio series. So this is arts workshops led by local artists for kids 5 and up. We usually pack the downstairs of the Urbana Free Library's Lewis Auditorium, and we spend a lot of time working with kids on a wide variety of things, from painting to design to sewing and textile work to puppetry and dance and theater. I mean, really anything, all led by local artists. This is a paid opportunity through our program, so we hire artists. And if you would like to present work, this is a great place for you to do that. Just as an example, on Sunday, our next Young Artist Studio features a character design discovery workshop with the people who are guest presenters for the Small Press Fest festival that's happening here, which is also another Urbana Arts Grant sponsored project. And they'll be actually presenting the workshop through Zoom as part of their grant and as part of Young Artist Studio. So just as an example of how things can work together, we encourage you to think about this. So apart from our art education initiatives, we also have ongoing art exhibits. Artist of the Corridor is an exhibit series that we have in connection with the Urbana Free Library. So it is a dual site exhibit with a portion of the work at City Hall and a portion of the work at the library. The city building is currently closed to the public due to COVID-19. However, we are continuing these exhibits. They will be primarily in the Urbana Free Library. If you would like to exhibit with us, I encourage you to get in touch, send us some work samples, and we'll talk about available opportunities. I also want to mention that the City of Urbana just last year launched its first Poet Laureate program. So if you are a creative writer or a poet and you'd like to be interested and you'd like to potentially get involved with the Poet Laureate program, whether that is collaborating with the laureate or applying to be the Poet Laureate yourself, we encourage you to be in touch. We're currently seeking our second Poet Laureate for the City of Urbana. And this year, we're delighted to have launched Urbana's Youth Poet Laureate program in collaboration with Urban Word of New York City. The Youth Poet Laureate is for youth between 13 and 18 years old. And this student will also not only serve a full year and receive an honorarium as well, they get a $1,000 honorarium, but we also will have this person be eligible for the national title of Youth Poet Laureate. I want to also mention Art Now. These are all programs that are continuing despite COVID-19. So Art Now is a TV series where we feature different artists. So we interview local artists about their craft, we see samples of their work, and we spin it all together into a wonderful story where we can tell a little bit about that artist's past, their present work, and the future directions of their artistic work. So each of them formulate kind of an individual artist feature. On occasion, we'll have groups, and on occasion, we'll have duos or trios. But the core of it is that we're featuring different local artists, and we really try to incorporate lots of diversity here too, of artistic and creative sector, of the identity of artists. So I encourage you to reach out if you would also like to be featured. We have this as a web series, so it does get released to YouTube and it gets shared on all of our social media, but it also airs on Channel 6 on repeat throughout the month, 2 days a week, Mondays and Tuesdays. Another project that we have that has been a bit on hiatus is our Open Scene Open Mic. However, we're in talks right now of returning that back to its former glory as a virtual program. Open Scene Open Mic is just what it sounds like, a wonderful open mic that invites people of all ages to come and participate and share poetry, music, performance, storytelling, song, dance, prose, spoken word, poetry, comedy, anything you'd like to share. It's really moved throughout different venues, and like our arts grants, we will work to partner with local venues to continue it, because part of grounding it in our local art scene came out of a grant that first sponsored Open Scene, with the idea that we want to expand our art scene to make sure it's reflective of our community, but also that we're always carving out new and inclusive venues in Urbana. We also have ongoing sculpture and mural programs. So if you are somebody who creates sculpture or murals, do get in touch with us about these upcoming deadlines. Another thing I'll mention about the thing in the center there is that this is part of Murals on Glass. So most recently, our 2009 Murals on Glass, 19, excuse me, was our installation of In the Sunshine by Black Mao on the Cunningham Township Supervisor's Office front windows. That's the image on the lower right corner. And what we do is we select a different downtown building, usually a public building, to be the site of a new digital mural. So anyone can be a muralist in this program. You don't have to be able to do large scale painting. You just have to be able to take a digital image of your artwork. The artwork is then printed on adhesive vinyl and put on downtown windows. We also have a new utility box program, and we will be announcing very soon the installation of some of our utility box murals. But these will be ongoing projects where you could submit and have your work on display throughout town. Lastly, another recent example of a program that I also share here to not only inform you, but to get you thinking about installation works or other ways that you can have art projects in a pandemic. One is the Great Art Doors. So this is a project of the Park Districts of Urbana and Champaign, 40 North Spurlock Museum, and our program. We selected 10 area artists to have installed works throughout Champaign and Urbana in neighborhood parks and 2 community gardens. And we really encourage everyone to go around and view the work. We're going to be having some upcoming artist talks in conjunction with the work, because the work itself was selected in part because of the different social messaging and conversation generation that's possible through the works as they were presented. So we have works that explore Black motherhood, care work and essential workers. We have some that explore gun violence in the community. There's just quite a variety of really beautiful and striking images and artworks that we hope will be the center of lots of important discussions. And so we will be having a couple of artist talks coming up soon with this program. So all of those are wonderful ways to get involved with our program, and they're not a comprehensive list, but some things that are especially active right now, and we encourage you to get involved. This, though, brings me to our arts grants. And often the Urbana Arts and Culture Program is known first and foremost for our arts grants. We give out support to local artists for a variety of creative projects, including things like festivals, exhibitions, productions, visual art, music, performance, environmental art, spoken word and poetry, dance and new media, and really anything. We have a very expansive definition of the arts. If we see it as creative, expressive, and bringing the community together in Urbana, we will be excited to hear more about it. So you're thinking about applying to an arts grant. This is wonderful. We're so happy you're here. This number has gone way up, so I need to update this slide, but we have funded nearly 300 local artists and artistic projects through the Urbana Arts Grant since its inception. And we're so thrilled that we've been able to do that. But I want to give you a little bit of background on the Arts Grant program itself. So we funded things like Heartland Maker Fest, and these are just some examples of things that we funded in the past. The CU Folk and Roots Festival, Midwest Mendang, Asian Heritage Month. And as you look at all of these, I'm sure you're thinking, and these look like large-scale gathering events, Urbana First Fridays. So this brings us to talking about this year. I highlight those in usual years because they're just wonderful. They tend to be the events that people may have recognized a little more than some of the smaller events that we do. This year is going to be particular because we really are going to ask that all of our applicants apply with the assumption that nothing is going to change immediately about COVID-19. So here's some general guidance, and we did outline some more specific guidance that'll be available on our website. So projects must follow the CU Public Health Department and state guidance for COVID-19 safety. Our Urbana Arts and Culture program has outlined the guidance. As I said, this will be available soon on our website. Applications still must situate within the city of Urbana. So our funding is designed to support projects taking place within the city. Now, if you're doing a virtual event or a virtual project, that means that you are partnering with intention with our local businesses or organizations to really situate it in Urbana. This is especially an important point if you're an artist applying, not attached to an organization, and wanting to propose a virtual event. We ask that you partner with local organizations and think about ways that are mutually beneficial to them. I can give you some examples of what that can look like here in a moment. COVID-19 associated costs are eligible expenses. So that can include sanitation materials. It can include video production costs if you're doing virtual programming and you want to pay for a videographer, or anything associated with kind of making it safe and COVID-19 really adhering to the guidance. This is going to be something that we encourage you to include in your budgeting. Proposals should assume no changes to the current COVID-19 situation, and you are encouraged to work directly with us as the staff, but also the city, the public health department. We can give you lots of guidance. You may know that the city of Urbana has extended its special event permit current suspension. So that means that we can't currently allow for large scale gatherings and events of any kind. That said, there's a lot of adaptive ways, and so we're going to go over what some of that can look like today. But one thing's for certain, the goals of our program are not changing. And so we always ask that when you're writing a proposal, that you really take these program goals to heart and think about how your proposal really furthers these along. So let me just go over them, and they're fairly broad. Integrate arts into the urban environment, creating a sense of place and purpose, promoting tourism and commerce. This is especially important in a time where we're facing economic downturn. How are we also supporting our local businesses? How are we getting people to connect with one another in a time of isolation? These are all very important pieces of our grant program. Increase the availability of publicly accessible projects in the arts. We really want to encourage more people to get out and experience the arts. Encourage emerging artists and art forms. We really value innovation. If you're creating new types of art, we want to see it. Preserve and commemorate local and multicultural traditions and histories. If you can also really situate your project in Urbana, and sometimes that what I like to say is, why Urbana? So sort of be asking yourself that as you're putting a proposal together. What makes this a uniquely Urbana story, a uniquely Urbana project? And if it isn't unique to Urbana, how could this iteration of it then be unique to Urbana? What partnerships are you going to grow? What ways is it going to enhance the city of Urbana? We want you to enrich the lives of Urbana residents and visitors. We want you to increase opportunities for them to engage in the arts in its many forms. So this also means moving your recipients of a project from mere audience members to engaged. And that means not just having them view something, but is there some way that they can interact? Is there something way that they can be a part? Represent the community in its full diversity, and encourage partnerships among artists, performers, businesses, and organizations. As I described, in 2018, we really moved our mission toward really elevating cultural work and the work of diversity and reaching underserved audiences. This is true of our grant program as well. We would really love to see lots of projects that help bring the arts to areas that have been historically underserved by the arts in a number of ways. And so those kinds of projects that also really work to situate itself in Urbana are going to be of utmost importance to us this year and going forward. So, should you apply? The short answer, of course, is yes. But let's talk about some of the things you'll need to make sure. The projects must take place within the city of Urbana and be experienced by Urbana community members. So if you do a virtual event, it needs to be situated in Urbana such that you can guarantee that it will be primarily viewed by Urbana residents. Now that said, of course, during COVID-19 is a great time to connect Urbana residents with people from a wide variety of places around the world, and that can be actually really thrilling and exciting for Urbana. But we do want you to know that these are Urbana Arts Grants. This is, of course, just important to emphasize when we live in a sort of Twin City environment. This other important thing to do is to take a look at maps and make sure something truly is in Urbana. We do have a lot of county land around here, and things do need to be within the limits of the city of Urbana. Projects must be open and accessible to the public. So that means no restricted entry. They shouldn't have paid portions. If there's paid portions at all, the overall project, the things that we fund should be primarily those open to the public. Permanent installations are still not eligible. However, murals and sort of semi-permanent installation works are invited and encouraged, especially during this time of COVID-19. My secret hope is that this will be a year where murals just like flourish throughout the city of Urbana. Projects cannot be mainly for fundraising or degree completion. This is an important thing to point out in a college town. They cannot be your dissertation work. Applicants may apply in up to 2 separate categories per grant cycle. And those awarded in previous years are eligible to apply for grant in 2021. Let me say a little thing here. We always encourage you to continue to apply if you've received grants before. And the story of grant writing in general, this is, I mean, a global story, is that once you get one grant, it tends to be easier to get more. So definitely don't believe that if you got a grant once before, you won't get funded again. No, you absolutely will. And it's a very high likelihood. However, one important thing to make sure is that you're not applying for the exact same project. If you're applying to sort of continue work in a new direction or kind of grow work that was funded last year or in a previous cycle, that's appropriate. Make sure you really make that clear in your proposal. So make sure that your proposal outlines that this is sort of a part 2 or whatever it is, and why it is different and why you deserve more funding to grow this project in this additional direction. What new audiences are you going to reach? How is it evolving the work? All of that. That'll be very important to delineate. And just another comment on that actually before we get into these grant categories. It's also important to note that, you know, for organizations that are dependent on grant funding for different reasons, it could be beneficial to look at your full repertoire of programs that you do and consider certain programs might be better for an arts grant one year, and then, you know, having your budget fund that in a different year, and kicking us another program that you tend to do, but really thinking about it as it's unique to Urbana and for this grant, really supporting arts and culture. So there's real ways of thinking that through, and I want you to know that, you know, we're here to support you as well. Grant categories now. So we've added the Youth Poet Laureate category in our Poet Laureate last year. Our Poet Laureate receives $2,000 honorarium as a set honorarium, and our Youth Poet Laureate receives the $1,000 award as well. However, we do have technically 4 categories, but 3 tiers of grants. So first is tier 1, and now tier 1 includes arts in the schools. So tier 1 is our smallest category of grants, typically the one I usually advise first-time applicants to consider, but it's for individual or small-scale projects requiring between $500 and $1,500 in funding. Arts in the Schools is an award that we've now put within tier 1. So that means that if it meets the eligibility requirements for Arts in the Schools, which are that it takes place within the school day in collaboration with an Urbana School District 116 school. So it cannot be an after-school enrichment program, but during school to encourage arts education curriculum during the school day, then you can check box an area on our application, and it will consider you for the Arts in the Schools award. And we give that award out special within tier 1. Tier 2 is designed for mid-sized projects and requires a 50% match. $1,500 to $4,500 is the typical budgetary amount. When we say we require a match, that means that we expect that your total project costs would be more than here, and that we're being asked to support 50% of that. So that means up to $4,500 represents 50% of your total project cost. We do ask that that match be partially a cash match, but we allow for in-kind match to work. And the distinction there, of course, is cash is money, and in-kind could be other resources. So for example, if you're partnering with an organization and they normally charge rental for their space, but they're giving you space for your project free of charge. That would be considered an in-kind donation, and you would quantify it based on what they would normally have charged rent, and you'd write that in as a match, an in-kind donation match. Okay, so tier 3 then is the large scale projects. They require a 70% match, which means that our grant can only make up 30% of the total project budget, and they're between $5,000 and $10,000. And so I'm going to go now through some of the grant categories to give you a sense of what tends to fall in these different categories. So let's start with tier 1, and I updated this to reflect all 2020 grant things, so you can actually see adaptive event examples already. So this does not require in-kind or matching funds. The tier 1 doesn't at all. And I'm just going to give you some examples. So very recently we installed a new mural by Carly Upchurch, and this is now available at 123 West Main in Urbana. This was done during COVID time. We even did a ribbon cutting with social distance and masks, and this was another project that barely went off without a hitch during COVID-19. Another was the Clapboard Independent Filmmakers Workshop. This was by Borima Quadrago, and it is a project that invited teens to learn about filmmaking, and it resulted in an independent filmmaking festival. The teens that participated, you can see here, were socially distanced and they had masks, and this took place at the Independent Media Center in downtown Urbana. Another example to the far right is the Afro-Caribbean Jazz Collective's performance at the CU Jazz Festival at the Rose Bowl. You can't see too well through the picture, but they're, apart from the lead person, they're all in masks, and they were performing outdoors at the Rose Bowl as part of their live music lineup. So you can see there's 3 examples right here, and we have many more that have been able to continue, just adhering to the public health guidance and taking lots of measures to be safe and aware of COVID-19. Tier 2, here's a couple of other examples. So these again are mid-sized grants. We do require a match, and it's ideal for collaborations, groups, troops, community initiatives. Some examples here are the CU Black and African Arts Virtual Festival that recently happened back in September. Here you've got a picture on the right of a cooking demonstration being done at the Common Ground Food Co-op, and this was then recorded and done and given through Zoom. We also have around the side a listing of different activities that were had. Materials, educational materials were distributed through partnerships with youth programs, and there was quite a lot of virtual festival things that even included things like the vendors that they normally have having online vending. So a lot of things continued despite, of course, COVID-19. We also have a teen art exhibition that's currently underway through the Teen Art Council Tier 2 grant for 2020 for the Fab Lab and the Teen Open Lab at the Urbana Free Library. This is another example of a different kind of project that's done entirely through adaptive measures. So for the teen art exhibit, you can't see it super well here, but on their flyer, if you look closely on the left image, there are pictures of kits that they're giving out as art supply kits. And so you can pick up your kit at either the Fab Lab or the Urbana Free Library, but they're all put together in advance. And there's a sculpture kit, there's a watercolor kit, there's an acrylic painting kit, quite a variety of options. Teens select and sign up for the exhibit, and the exhibit was designed by teens. It has a theme and everything, and the students then create works, drop them off, and then they're exhibited, and a digital display will be available as well. So you can see you're still meeting our program goals, and all of these efforts being very creative and thinking about ways that we're still bringing art to the public, bringing resources to the public, bringing education to the public. The teen art exhibit, for example, is offering workshops for those teens on how to use the supplies to make watercolor, to make sculpture. But all of it being done virtually, and then really working hard to think through accessibility issues that may arise. So partnership with lots of organizations like the school district, the library, the park district, they're all taking a lot of steps to make sure that we have hotspots given out to areas where internet access is less, that we have supplies given for free to anyone who needs them to participate. The Park District has a new wonderful mobile Park District van called Urbana that is also delivering kind of personal protective equipment like masks and things, and also different activities through the van itself coming to your neighborhood. So I tell you these things to tell you that there's actually quite a lot of organizational adaptations that are out there, and these are potential partners for your projects that can use then their resources to help create adaptive events during COVID-19. Lastly is our Tier 3 grant. We have a different set of guidance for these for this tier, and we're not going to go in depth on them at this particular juncture. But all this to say, Tier 3 is our largest category, and during COVID-19, all three of the ones represented here, Pygmalion, Sweet Corn, CU Folk and Roots, and actually 40 North Boneyard Arts Festival, those were our 4 funded in 2020, have all done virtual festivals. Pretty elaborate virtual festivals with a full lineup of performances and speakers, and a lot of partnerships with local businesses where they actually involve contracted services. So just as an example of how that could work, because this does apply for any tier, for an example, like Pygmalion Music Festival this past season collaborated with the CU Adventures in Time and Space downtown escape room creative business, and they actually commissioned the creation of a virtual escape room themed around their festival. And the festival actually signed groups of people up to do the escape room together. You could do the escape room with a group no matter where that group was located across the globe. Really fascinating way of taking advantage of the COVID-19 moment, but also recognizing that we can actually bring groups together that maybe normally can't always attend these festivals. And we can also still ground it very much within the city of Urbana through partnerships, contracted partnerships with local businesses. All right, so I'm going to get in next to the application process. So we always recommend you attend a workshop. So thank you for tuning in today and listening to this workshop. We also are going to be offering drop-in hours. So we do encourage you to take a look at those. Those are listed again on our website. You can see I'm offering 2 days of drop-in hours here before the holidays, and then 2 days in January. I always have some people that want to apply in advance, and then I have a lot of people that want to apply in January. So we'll be offering some drop-in hours. And the goal, of course, is to make sure that you have some time to ask me any one-on-one questions. One thing to remember is that as the Arts and Culture Coordinator, I am actually a neutral party. So I am not on your jury, which means I'm not grading you. And that means I am in the business of making sure that your application looks as polished and ready as it possibly can before it goes in front of a jury. And I'm really delighted to work one-on-one with you to think through project suggestions and ideas and really help you in development of it. That's what those drop-in hours are for. And I really created them because year after year, I'll get lots of requests for individual meetings, and fielding them all and trying to find the time for them all is a little tricky. So I decided I'm going to set some dates, and you can sign up for a 30-minute slot and we can just talk. And so they'll all be on Zoom, and you can show me drafts of what you've got going. You can ask for feedback. You can even pitch ideas if you haven't even gotten to the draft part yet. But I want you to know that those will be there for you, and you'll see them populated on social media. So if you don't follow Urbana Arts and Culture on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, all those things, please follow us because I'll be posting a lot of it there. How do I apply? Okay, so again, you're going to go to our website, Arts Grants. A couple things that are there that are also potentially useful to you. You're going to see those guidelines popped up. A lot of this information is reiterated in our guidance. So our general guidance is already there, and you should absolutely read it in depth. But we'll also have that COVID-19 guidance updated pretty soon. You can also find listings currently of our past 2 years. I tend to not leave up many years back, and I probably could put them back up, but at least the past 2 years, so 2020 and 2019, the full list of everyone who was awarded. And I find it really valuable to encourage first-time applicants or even returning applicants to go and look at that. And I don't say look at it because you'll see what kinds of things we fund. No, I want you to look at it to actually see the breadth of things that we fund and to really, ground in yourself that we want your project to, that your project and your vision, there's space for it. And I really hope that when you look and you see the diversity of things that we fund, that you get that from the messaging, but that you also see that all together, they really create a diverse lineup, and that's what we're looking for. So when I say, work to make sure that your project reflects the full diversity of the Urbana community, we don't expect necessarily that if you're doing a project that targets a specific, like cultural population, for example, that it needs to appeal to everyone. It may not. But what we do is we want to make sure that you make an effort, of course, to make sure that it's open and accessible to anyone who may have an interest, because we want everyone to have an interest in a wide variety of Urbana's diversity. But we also want that when we put all of those grants together on a wonderful list at the end of our funding cycle, and we say, look at, this is our presented list of everything we're funding, that together it really paints a broad picture of Urbana's artistic and cultural diversity. That's what we want. So here's some other things that you're going to be asked to put together. So you're going to need a project expenditures table. We have a very simple one. You're just going to fill that in. I'm going to go over it in a minute. You'll compile some other things. We're going to need bios of any artists that you're collaborating with, or an overview of an applicant group. So for an example, if you are the library and you're bringing in a musician to do a Zoom-based concert with kids, and maybe you're hiring an artist to do something based on visual art in connection with that concert, you'll have a biography about the Urbana Free Library, so an overview of the library itself. You'll have a bio for the musician, and you'll have a bio for the artist. So that's just an example. You don't need to necessarily give us tax exempt status information unless you're a nonprofit and you'd prefer to include it. We definitely encourage it. If you are a nonprofit, it's good for us to know your status. So you just include that in your application. We're going to need a detailed description of your proposed project. So this can really just be you don't have to make it many pages long. It can be a one-page description of what you plan to do. The who, what, where, when, and why. We also want you to outline COVID-19 precautions. So what are you going to be doing? What is your plan? We want to know that we're funding people who are thinking about this, especially because, and I'll get to it in a moment, but project feasibility is one of the core areas that we grade you on as a jury. So promotions and marketing plan is also another important piece. I usually encourage people to just think of that as a timeline. So literally use dates and bullet points of what you're going to do. So if you're doing a theater production and you're going to do auditions in June, then you'll say June, 5th through this date is virtual auditions. This and this is when we'll do selection, but you're really, talking about the timeline and then how you're promoting it. So what are you going to do? We also want you to think thoughtfully about marketing. So what are we going to do to go offline, create accessibility, put things in multiple languages, consider accessibility needs for folks with disabilities. What are the things that we can do to really get the word out? Description of proposed partners. So again, kind of like you did the bios and overview, you're going to do a similar thing for the project partners. I usually say keep this simple. Keep it like 2 sentences. One is what's their mission and what do they do? And the second sentence is what are they going to do for this project? And that's all we need to know. Then you're going to want to include some work samples and an index of those work samples. And you're going to have also, it's really beneficial to have evidence of matching support or other support. This can come in the form of supportive letters. So if you're partnering with the Park District and they're submitting a letter that says we're excited to partner with you. We've already met with the organizer of this grant proposal and we're excited to work together. That will be a boost for the project feasibility because we know that the groundwork has already been laid to make that partnership possible. So here's a little bit about work samples. Do not send original artwork. You're going to be uploading files into an online application or submitting. It says you could put them on CD or DVD or some sort of flash drive. Truly, I get so stressed about that. So I encourage you to really just send me links. We have a lot of technology at our fingertips these days. I don't think we need to do that so much. If you put things on YouTube or Vimeo, if you can't send it through Dropbox or other means, just send me the link and put it as an unrestricted, or sorry, as a restricted video. And you can even send me a password so that it's not publicly listed if you don't want it to be. And then make sure you label your files in this particular way so that we can find them easily. We do have specific file specifications that you need to follow, and you can submit no more than 8 work samples in any combination. I encourage you to focus on combinations. It's not, if you're a musician, for instance, it is not fun to just get like a bunch of really long, 5-minute songs to listen to. It would be better to, if you're doing a music project or putting on a concert, to see maybe a photo from a past concert you've done or video footage from a past concert you've participated in. Maybe a piece, one song recording as an audio recorded, but maybe, some sheet music of your work if you're a composer. It could be like a past flyer for an event that you put on before. But that as a combination paints a much better picture than just like 4 pieces of work. And the same goes for anyone. I'm picking on musicians right now, but the truth is that it could go also for painters. If you sent me 5 paintings, that's wonderful. But if you're proposing that you're giving a workshop to kids or something on painting, or even a workshop to adults, I want to know what your experience teaching is. So I would actually like to see maybe curriculum, or I would like to see a picture of you giving a workshop the last time. Anything like that. You're going to apply through email. You're going to send your applications to artsgrant@urbanaillinois.us. They are due January 13th by 5. We are also no longer accepting hard copies. And I'm going to ask, if you do have a question, feel free to hold to the end or send me an email and I'll be sure to answer it. Let's see. Next, I want to talk about restrictions, and there's a little bit more that I want to emphasize here that we've tried to outline a little bit better this year. So a couple things. If you are hiring employees that are working in an ongoing way, this typically doesn't apply, to be truthful, but if you're hiring people and they're, doing dangerous things for your project, like maybe they're installing scaffolding or something, I mean, truly, I would advise you to contract that work. But you need to be prepared to offer workers' compensation and liability insurance. And you can build that into your project budget. For the purchase of non-consumable materials, this grant is not applicable. So you cannot purchase cameras or computers or power tools. That is not something that you can do. You can rent those items, but you can't purchase them for you to have. For the completion of degree work, so this is again not an area that you can use the grant for. You cannot use it to finish up a degree, and you can't use it for anything that's solely or primarily a fundraiser. You also can't use it for religious activities inclusive of religious worship, instruction, or proselytization. So just as a note, of course, faith-based organizations, you are eligible to apply for an Urbana Arts Grant to support arts and cultural programming that you provide. Your proposal should just outline the care taken to make sure that you're separating in both time and location your inherent religious activities from any arts or cultural programming that you do. And we have successfully funded a wide variety of faith-based organizations doing non-faith-based activities, but I want to make sure that that's very clear in our proposal. Another is that your proposals cannot be serving as a political endorsement or can't serve as part of somebody's political candidacy, anyone running for office, any of those sorts of things. They can also not fund cash prizes, gifts, or most giveaway items. There's some exceptions around the giveaway topic, but I definitely would want to hear and give you advice about it before you put it into your budget. And we definitely can't have our grant money be used for cash prizes. It also cannot provide any honorarium or salary or service payments to City of Urbana staff or members of the Arts and Culture Commission, unless it is absolutely outside of their work as a staff member. But Arts and Culture Commission members cannot be paid through arts grants at all. they know that when they take their Arts Commission role. And then for any projects that serve as commercial advertising. So an example of this would be like somebody who wanted to paint a mural for their business, but it's largely going to be like a sign about their business. That's not something that we would fund. We're really looking towards public art and less towards commercial advertising. So just be sure to be aware of these different restrictions. All right, so what's next? We've got a timeline here that includes the deadline of January 13th. Then we're going to have jury meetings that first week of February, more or less. And we're expected to give official notice by February 15th of 2021 and also release a press release that same day. Here's some important dates for all tiers. So first is February 25th, we will have a virtual orientation, the first of 2 for Urbana Arts grantees. You only have to attend 1, we just try to offer 2. The second would be the next day, virtual orientation number 2, so you'll see these advertised. And then March 5th is when we will have a virtual Urbana Arts Grant Awards sneak peek celebrations. We always have this event called the sneak peek, and we really just like to highlight all of our awardees for the upcoming year and really give a sneak peek to the greater arts community and the greater Urbana community about what's to come for the art scene. And then the 15th will be the deadline for signing contracts for the 2021 cycle. I'm not going to go into depth here, but you can just see, like in general, we have a grant period that's already open. You have your grant application. Our staff then does an eligibility and completeness review. And then we go to jury, and then you'll hear back and you'll be invited to the sneak peek if you were awarded. And of course, you're invited regardless because it's open to the public, but you'll be invited to be highlighted. All right, so selection process. I like to give you a little bit of background on what our jury looks like. So we have 2 jury panels, each consisting of 5 to 6 artists, arts administrators, or citizens. They are selected for their educational and professional experience, diversity of both identity and of creative sector that they're familiar with, and their own awareness of the local art scene. Those who have a conflict of interest are not allowed to serve. We do rely heavily on self-reporting in that respect, like anyone does. But we also talk through conflict of interest very openly at the beginning so that people can make sure they feel that they can, within a lot of integrity, evaluate. And I will say also that anyone who's a family member or has a very explicit conflict of interest absolutely does not serve in the role. But when I say it's a conversation, it usually is more related to us being a small town and a small art scene, and a lot of people know each other. So it's really more relies on kind of personal feelings about, like, do you feel like you can be, that even if you know this person, that you can be objective. And if you don't feel that way, then you're invited to then not serve on the jury at that point. So we have 2 separate jury meetings, and they're all moderated by me. The jurors evaluate, well, they receive and review application materials in advance. So they've actually already graded them before they meet with their initial grades. And these are kind of drafted grades. And on the day then that they meet, they're given a score to each application based on 3 criteria. So I collect all the scores at the beginning without a discussion. And then we go through the pieces one by one again. So it's a kind of long meeting. And then they'd have a discussion about what was striking, like why did they give it this score or this score? And usually from the discussion, those grades are honed even more. And then that final ranking is done, and we determine, based on both quantitative and sort of qualitative evaluation, who is going to be getting an arts grant that year. So we have 3 core areas that we evaluate on. First, of course, is artistic quality. Second is community integration. And third is project feasibility. So artistic quality, pretty obvious. We want to see quality work. We want to make sure that you have the background and the expertise necessary to carry out your project. It also is shown through your work samples. So really making sure that your work samples show that you have the experience necessary to carry something out. Community integration, this is, really shown through how you work diligently to create access to the arts. So what are you doing to make sure that the project is reaching people? How is the community involved beyond simply being an audience? And then project feasibility, this is really in the groundwork that you've laid. So what has taken your proposal from an idea to a possibility, to a probability, right? So we want to see things like letters of support. We want to make sure that your budget is very clear, that your ideas are really well laid out, that your timeline makes sense, that you've thought about COVID-19, that you've really been thinking about, how do I carry this forward? If you hit all those marks, you will be in good shape for jury evaluations. This is a very outdated thing, but the reason I leave it up here is because it's been largely the same every year. So we fund a little over 50% of the projects every year that apply. So that it does mean you have a pretty decent chance of being funded. The program does reserve the right to award grant proposals for less than the amount requested. And the amount available for each category is calculated after applications are received. So in other words, if we get a whole bunch of tier 1, we will put more money to balance that out into tier 1 before we go through the jury process, so that the jurors know kind of how much money they have in each category. And we are funded 2 ways. We have both non-TIF or general funds and TIF funds. So you might be asking, what is a TIF district? So TIF stands for tax incremental financing. We have some TIF maps available online, and I'm going to share one with you here in a moment. What it means is that things that occur within our downtown TIF district can be funded by either fund, but things that take place outside of our downtown TIF district can only be funded by our general fund monies. So there's some value to having even a portion of your project take place within our downtown TIF district. So Urbana-Champaign's Independent Media Center, Lincoln Square, the Urbana Free Library, CoLab, there's a wide variety of venues in our downtown. These are just to name a few. If you're doing something like a virtual event, like I said, that also means that you're still collaborating in some way with a downtown business or venue, and it's evidenced more through the mutually beneficial collaboration than necessarily like utilizing their space. But it does need to be grounded in Urbana as much as possible. Here's the maps. You can view these things online that show TIF districts 1 and 2. They formulate the downtown TIF. And you can see it's it goes all the way down to California Avenue and all the way up Cunningham. That's a pretty wide range. And I'm happy to answer any additional questions you have about TIF. So let's talk about what makes a winning proposal. So really be thoughtfully planned. Look at those past recipients I mentioned to you. They're all available on that web link. And take a look at, what are the things that we fund, and maybe how did they write up their proposals. Make sure the information in your proposal is very up to date and relevant. Make sure your bio is up to date, all of that. And don't talk in jargon. Don't assume the jury panel knows anything about you or your project. So make sure everything is explained. Use common language, and that the work samples really support their proposal, and that the budget is realistic. Be specific about expected outcomes. Remember that we grade on 3 criteria: artistic quality, community integration, and project feasibility. I also want to mention, make sure you write yourself into your grant budget. A lot of times with artists, we really just want to get the work out there, and sometimes we're not even thinking about paying ourselves. I want you to know that these grants are designed to support you as a creative worker, as somebody in the creative industry. So we encourage you to write yourself into your project, and I'm going to go and show you right now the budget. So this is a very simple budget expenditure sheet that we include in your grant application. So this is what you're going to be filling out. So the first column invites you to share what amount you're requesting from the city. So again, if you're doing like a tier 2, this should only be 50% of the total in the column 4. But see how we have this broken down then on the far left. We have personnel costs. So this could be like you paying you and your partners on the program for the work that you put in and administratively on the program, or artistic work that you do. If you're paying somebody to do like web development or video production, that could go under technical. And then, so that's what, anytime you're paying people, we're in category A. If you're in category B, we're talking more about supplies and equipment and space. So supplies and equipment, again, that can include things like COVID-19 support, Promotions and printing, any marketing costs. So if you're paying Minuteman to print a bunch of things, or FedEx, or to print a bunch of things, or you're, getting postage from the post office. If you're buying art supplies, that would go under arts and materials. If you're reserving space for rehearsals, that would go under space and equipment rental. Other professional services could be like contractual services that aren't necessarily for like a person, but maybe an organization that you're paying. So this is really what we have here as amount requested from the city. Matching funds are going to be any cash funding that you have. And then in-kind donations, which can also kind of formulate your match, but we're going to put them in a separate category to delineate, would be under in-kind. And just as a reminder, in-kind is anything that is not cash. So anything that's not cash. So if somebody donated, like, I don't know, 15 canvases towards your art exhibit, you would quantify how much you think that would cost were you to have bought them new, and you'd put that under as an in-kind donation under materials. If the Independent Media Center gave you their space to use for free for your rehearsals for your theater production, you would ask them, what is your typical rental rate? And you would quantify that and you'd put it under space and equipment rental, under in-kind donations. You're going to total that all up and really get the total. The other thing that has not been updated on this slide that I want to tell you it's changed on your application is under expenditure notes on that far left column, it no longer says if applicable. It says put info here, and it's underlined, and it's red, it's bolded, it's huge. And the reason why is because when people leave this blank, it really gives the jury pause because they often have a lot of questions. And so actually I want to encourage you to get a lot of detail here. So if you're saying supplies and materials, I want you to delineate what are those supplies and materials, like this much money for this, this is going to be for this, and actually kind of break down, itemize your budget. If you're saying space reservation and you just write down an amount, I want to know what you're reserving, and what's the rental rate. So go and put that in the expenditure notes. So you're going to put as many details in there as you can, because the more detail you have, the more of a plan it is and not just a fabulous idea. And that's really core. When you're writing a grant, you're taking something that started as a wonderful idea and you're evolving it into a plan of action. And we want to see that plan of action so that we can give you a high score on project feasibility. Here's some other tips. So this time of COVID-19, it has us all hair raised. We know that. It's also a great time to get creative. We know that artists are at the forefront of being innovative and creative, and it has proven to us to be true even through this 2020 cycle, as so many set out to do projects having no idea that COVID-19 was on the horizon and had to adapt their work, and have adapted it so thoughtfully and innovatively. We really encourage you to think about new ways of sharing the arts under these current restrictions that we're living in. The arts are not unessential, they are essential. They are essential for making us feel connected as a community, for encouraging a life and a world we want to live in, not just survive in. And it is so important that we continue to share and get our work out there and make sure that people are given opportunities to create, to convene safely, and of course to experience the arts. This is a great time for arts that are immersive, for arts that are encounterable out in the street, things that aren't necessarily event driven, but rather really designed as maybe longer term, or having multiple components that can also be done through home, having portions that take place out in the public but don't convene as an event, but rather encourage people to visit at their leisure, that offer unique collaborations between Urbana and the rest of the globe during this time of many virtual things. I mean, there's so much that's possible right now. And I really encourage you to write a proposal that you need to write for 2021. This is very important for this political moment, this cultural moment. I think it's very important to situate it there. Give yourself, of course, plenty of time to put the application together. I mean, if you're like me, sometimes you take that advice and sometimes you don't, and that's okay. But make sure that you do a lot of your thinking up front. If you have questions for program staff, I'm here. Ask me as much as you can. Get our feedback. Have someone else read your proposal that isn't me. So have a friend or somebody else that is not in your creative sector, that knows nothing of what you do, to make sure that it reads clearly to somebody that isn't in your field, that doesn't perhaps talk in the language you speak in. So really do that, because that'll also make sure that it's ready to be seen by a real diversity of folks. Have a specific work plan and timeline. Get as specific as you can. That who, what, where, when, and why, very important to delineate in your proposal. Letters of support, they're not required, but they are a huge boost. If you can get letters of support from your partners, that even if it's as simple as we've seen this is how we plan to partner, we're excited, please fund them. Like, those are all really helpful in boosting that feasibility score. And of course, follow the instructions. We give you a lot of detail. Our grant guidelines are oftentimes as long as I expect your grant proposal to be, which is to say a few short pages. But for guidelines, it's a lot. So be sure to read them over. And just know that you don't have to write an essay. You know, just make sure that you're detailed on what you do write up. Okay, now here's what can happen. Of course, we hope that you're funded. Hooray! I use this slide every year because it's so cute. Everyone at Cranard is probably cheering for you. And we won't be gathering like this, but in spirit we will. There's a lot of next steps when you are funded. So you'll enter into an agreement with the city. You'll work with me throughout the year. Our funding goes from April 1 to April 1. So you are able to start your project in April 1, 2021. And you have a full year to complete the project. Given the uncertainty of these times, and it's true every year, not just during COVID-19, but we are flexible. We know that things happen. You'll stay in good communication with me. We'll kick it off with a great orientation where everyone will really get to know how they can work with the arts program through the grants. But you'll also hear a lot of an emphasis from me about just communicating when things are going awry, or if things are not exactly staying on timeline. It's just good for us to know. And usually, unless there's some reason for me not to, I'm happy to approve extensions or to really work with you as much as possible. When the project is finished, you'll give a final report. It includes a presentation to our commission at one of our monthly meetings. Only after that report will you get the second portion of your grant, because these tier 1, 2, and arts in the schools all receive 50% of their grant up front and 50% upon completion of a final report and presentation. The tier 3 will receive their entire award upon completion as a reimbursement. And we can all work together, and we should. So you have to acknowledge the grant and all materials, but you can also work with us in a wide variety of ways to market, to promote, to document your work. Of course, there's also the horrid idea that you might not be funded, and it is horrid. And I'm hoping that this doesn't apply to any of you. But if you are not funded, don't be alarmed. Try not to take it personally. Funding is often competitive. It can sometimes take a couple of tries. We want you to do this, and this is great advice, no matter if you're applying to this grant or to any grant under the sun, or any scholarship for that matter, job even for that matter. Contact the coordinator and discuss the jury's comments. Ask for how your application could be improved for a future year. Find out why you didn't score high enough. And then look for other grant opportunities, because the great thing about writing a grant is you have to come up with kind of the same usually components for almost any grant you submit. Illinois Arts Council is continuing all their grants. So many places are trying to give out artist relief and grant monies right now. This is a great thing to come to, even if you don't get funded through this program, and I'm hopeful that all of you will. It is great to have these components together, to have written up your work and your proposal enough that you're then prepared to then submit it somewhere else, and you'll have everything you need to do so. And I will be continuing to post those things to our social media accounts as well. Here is my information, and this is where you can get in touch with me. I do encourage you to start with email. Follow us on all of our social media pages. We'll be posting a lot about the grant program there. Come to DropIn Hours, and just apply. Don't be afraid. The arts grants are here to support you. They're a yearly relief for artists. This is really intended to support any creative projects that bring our community together, that really help forward the arts, that commemorate what is uniquely and diversely Urbana. So reach out and do consider applying this year. And thank you for your time and attention.